So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and get with this. One of the things that Stephanie and I were talking about when we were talking about building your resume, and really focusing on some of the remote work aspect of it. There's kind of two different areas when we think about with resume. With remote working, it's the are you wanting to highlight work you've already been doing, or are you highlighting trying to get into a position? And those are kind of, they're similar, but they're different thought processes with that. And so with that, we also want to take a step back and really focus on resumes in general, because one of the things that we often find is that even with a lot of people who have graduated college, or and are fresh out into the professional world, or been out in the professional for quite a while, sometimes they want to put too much on a resume and not focus on what's important. And so that's one of the things we want to take a step back and really focus on what the goal of the resume is. It's not designed to get you the job. It's only designed to get you to the interview. And so one of the things I talk about with a resume is that, especially when I work with my college of business students, I always kind of think about resume and cover letters are kind of like half a filet mignon. If you like meat, and if you're vegetarian, I'm sorry you. But with a filet mignon, it's the best cut of meat, but it's also super teeny. So you don't want just half of a, you don't want just 3 ounces of the good. You want the whole thing. And so the whole idea of your resume is to impress them just enough so they want to get you in the room so they can learn more about you. And so it's not about a life history. It's not about anything else. It's your marketing document. It's designed completely just to kind of, get them salivating to learn more about you and your abilities. And so with that, especially now, as the economy is picking up, there's lots of jobs that are being hired. So there are going to be a lot of different hiring managers that are going to be inundated with lots of different applications and different job openings that they may have. And so with that, that's one of the things I really stress whenever I'm talking with anybody who's coming in, whether it's alumni or current students, is making sure that you're not putting information that's not directly related to that job that you're applying for on your resume. Because, if you have, 3-4 page resume, they may be only spending 10-15 seconds on your resume. There's no way they're getting past first page anyway. They're just trying to decide then and there whether or not you're making it to the next round. Okay. So really, really think about what's important for that specific job. And so that's where we really talk about having it be focused on that. So when you think about targeting your resume, it's about reading the job description. It's about highlighting specific achievements that you've had in different areas, whether or not that's previous course, previous work experience, whether or not that's, if you're recently graduated or still in college, internships, whatever those things are, the camp or the community involvement. We were just talking about, Jared was just talking about the board, and having some of those type of things on there. And so one of the things I talk about is that it's not necessarily what's important to you, it's important about you that's important to a hiring manager. And so making sure that you kind of switch places with the hiring manager, put yourself in their shoes about how do I make myself be appealing to them. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in general, but really focusing on, with the remote work and highlighting how to highlight that remote work, especially, and those skills that they're looking for with that.
So Kyle is very technical, and so with me, you're going to get a little bit more of the touchy-feely side. And I think something we have to realize before we decide whether, we're supposed to be talking about resumes and building that resume for work, but we have to decide, it sounds great. And I think a lot of us got to experience a little bit of it, but are you ready to work remotely? So before you go to build your resume, do you have the skills and the ability to work remotely? I Well, say from experience, I was out pretty long. I was out about a year and a half before I returned back to work, and it does take a lot of self motivation, self initiative. Can you get yourself started in the morning, sit down, and get to the grind of work? Or is that something that you're going to struggle with? Do you see the dishes? Do you see that they've left something out on the table? Do you see, the dog needs to out? And those are great things. For work-life balance that you need to incorporate, figure out how to work in your normally daily routine. But typically we do that because we have a routine of getting up and getting out of the house and coming back and getting things done. But when you're there 24/7, are you able to get things done? So here are some key skills that you would need to make sure you include in your resume, and also just do like a self assessment to see if you feel that you can work remotely. So communication, collaboration, problem solving, and time and task management. So thinking about those skills and how you would incorporate them in a resume to really stand out. But also before you get yourself into that situation, make sure that you are going to be able to manage that remotely.
Well, the other thing I would add with that, especially as well, is not only the are you during the workday, are you going to be concerned about getting distracted and with dishes or you know everything else, but are you going to be able to let work go at the end of the day and have defined work-life balance in that, or are you going to start blurring things together and be answering emails at 10:30 at night because whatever, because you know you're sitting too far away from where you've been working all day, so it's not really that big of a deal, and it starts out little bit that and it turns into you know a mountain. And
Yeah,
so
Maria agrees
when
with you,
we so
and I do too.
I see that. um, so one of the things that we really talked about um, with people who have the remote, um, for the last year and a half, or whether or not that's an internship, or that's full-time work, any number of different types of experience. And that's one of the things that I want to really stress on a person's resume is that it doesn't have to be paid experience. It doesn't even have to be it's a professional experience for it to be experience that can go on a resume. It could be volunteer experience. It could be, any type of campus involvement. You may have been taking classes remotely, and so you've been involved still on campus in some different ways, or but with all that, you can still highlight experiences like see as our one example on here. And but what you see here is that instead of there's a few different ways that you can kind of highlight that you already have some of that experience of working remotely, or have some of that experience of doing or having experience remotely. So it could be removing the city and state where the job is located and putting remote work as the location. That for me, that's kind of the way I like it. Another one that they've talked about is you put it in the first sentence of a bullet, or the first bullet point, and highlighting that. For me, I think that's fine if you do that. This is where it kind of gets into the preference versus what you should or should do versus just a personal preference. This is a personal preference for me. For me, I think that a lot of times sometimes we have too many bullet points when we start having a lot of good experiences. So I think just to save the real estate of a concise resume, that's why I focus more on location, changing it as opposed to having it take up that first bullet point. So with this, one of the things that I really stress all the time when we're working with anybody on their resume is that bullet points should not be about job responsibilities. They should be about accomplishments and achievements that you've had in that specific experience. And it's a little bit of a different mindset. So part of that is looking at what is that job opportunity that you're writing your resume for. What is it? What are they specifically looking for? And so if we're focusing on people who are looking for remote opportunities, Then you need to make sure that you're highlighting comfortableness with technology, especially, audio video technology and computer technology. You need to be able to highlight, not just telling someone that you have a soft skill, saying customer service or time management or self-starter. You need, in your bullet points, you need to be demonstrating how you've accomplished those or demonstrated those type of skills, okay, in the experiences that you've had. That's going to be extremely important to them, because no one's going to take your word who doesn't know you. No one's going to take your word that you suddenly have, your self-starter just because you say it. You need to tell them how you're a self-starter and how you've been able to accomplish things, projects over the last year and a half while Stephanie's been home for the last year and a half. She can't just put on there, I'm a starter just because I've been working from, nobody's going to just assume that she is. She needs to highlight those achievements of the projects that she's completed. She needs to highlight the different accomplishments that she's had, even while she may have a technical skill section where she highlights the collaboration tools of Zoom, the Google Hangouts, GoToWebinar, any of those type of things. One of the things I stress is with Microsoft Office. I feel like everyone should have a basic understanding of Microsoft Office. It's more, if you're going to highlight Microsoft Office, going above and beyond basic knowledge. Okay, and so it's good to highlight it if you can go into more detail than how to turn it on. So
I'm going to jump in here for just a second. Sure. So I'm going to just say that this was put on here to show a basic resume format. Resumes can be done in a lot of different ways, so I'm sure you guys are all aware that this is just one that was recommended. And so you can see something that we always stress of highlighting is matching key terms or key action verbs with what is listed in the job description. So that is why we once again highlighted some of those specific skills that you gain remotely, or some of those platforms that you use. When then moving on to this slide, if you need to really highlight your remote work experience, actually change that to a different head within your resume. And then once again, you would have that room to highlight what you have done remotely. So it's not just that you created a meeting in Zoom or Microsoft Teams, but what were you able to conduct when you were in that meeting? So were you able to, finish off a specific, big group project you have been working on? It's not just using the tool, it's how you use it. So that's why I think highlighting the remote work experience would be beneficial for those specifically looking to continue in a remote environment. It's not necessarily bad to say that if you're wanting to go back into an office environment that you couldn't highlight this as well, because I think that just shows more duality in your skills. And just quickly, because I wanted to be cognizant of time, I think that when talking about resume development, it's not so without just speaking very briefly on cover letter, because if we are highlighting that we want a remote experience, a cover letter is not meant to copy what is on your resume, it's to expand it. So they can read your resume, but if you are specifically looking for a position remotely or applying for those types of jobs, this is time to reiterate that information. So the purpose of the letter, that goes in the first paragraph basically of your cover letter, can state something about you're looking for a virtual experience or, a remote experience. And then that way it's straight up on exactly what your expectations are, and it's not led to be kind of like, oh, I don't know, because sometimes the resume doesn't give you the full opportunity to explain what you are designing in your work location. Once again, just highlighting some of those different qualifications and skills that you've already gained in a remote environment, or those that you could bring to the table if you are transitioning. So if you've been working on campus, I've already talked a lot about the skills and qualifications that transition well. We talk consistently about transferable skills. And we just have to highlight those skills in a way that is showing the employer that you're ready to be that self-starter. You're ready to start in the environment. And then lastly, once again, the cover letter specifics, tailoring it to a specific job, because there's several different types of industries and applications in which you could gain a remote working experience. So just making sure we reiterate that. And these are just other cover letter quick tips. So hopefully, I believe that is all we have for you today. And if you have any questions, this is, as you could tell when Kyle was speaking, this is something he does every single day, and I do it quite often still here working for the College of Technology. So we want to give you our contact information. So if you do have any questions, or you just need a second set of eyes when you're applying for a position, please feel free to use us as resources. We are always happy to help. So Kyle, anything else before we turn it back over to Terre?
The only thing I would say is just overall with both of these, just to wrap it up for me, it comes down to two keywords: consistency and relevancy. Consistency with how things look, and then relevancy with the information that's in it. Is it relevant to the job you're applying to? You take care of those two things, everything else will work out.
That was awesome, friends. Very well done. And I want to kind of reiterate what Kyle just said with relevancy. And I think you mentioned this. There are software programs, right, where resumes go into and cover letters, and sometimes your resume doesn't even get to a human eyeball without doing some research on what the actual job description is. And so, having a little bit, this is me being a little biased, but having a little bit of a marketing background is huge, because you can do that keyword research within a job description and say, oh, these are the things they're looking for. I need to make sure I have exactly that in my cover letter or in my resume, just so I can get past the bots and get to a human set of eyeballs. So yeah, this is huge. And we definitely really appreciate you putting this together. This was really good. This was a good start. I'm excited. Does anybody have questions? We've got about 3 minutes for questions for Kyle and Stephanie, or anything we want to double click into, or anything like that. We could put it into chat. Those silly bots. Yeah, those silly bots.
I do have a question. So lately I've been hearing to put your picture on a resume. Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you, because I've seen people putting it on business cards and stuff, and I thought that was just really because it creates bias, and it seemed I don't know, it just seems like it could set people up for failure. So I've heard mixed feelings.
So what I'll tell you, so there's kind of different things. One, when it comes to pictures, I say unless you're going into acting or modeling, there's no reason for them to know what you look like as far as your qualifications to do the job. Two, the other thing I'll tell you is that especially if you work with a lot of international students, a lot of international CVs and curriculum vitas, they are much more likely to have a lot of personal information on there. They're much more likely to have pictures, much more likely to have marital status, ethnicity, religion, gender, age, all those different types of things that are on there that we find that we in America will say those are, in an interview, those could technically be illegal questions to ask in an interview about your marital status or about your age or anything like that. So so depending on who you also are around when you're asking that, that's also be just different cultures and some of that kind of stuff. Well, with some of that, but for me, one of the things I will say, if a good intermediary is if you have a